This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian, and I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
So prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide if the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because this film is lit. A coming-of-age tale of tattoos, fishnets, and bruises. It's Whip It, and this film is lit. Hello and welcome back to This Film is Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. On this week's episode, we're discussing the 2009 Drew Barrymore directorial debut, Whip It, which is based on the Shauna Cross novel from this roughly the same 2007, I guess, a year or two before, but they got shopped at the same time. The movie went into production at the same time, basically. Novel Whip It, Derby Girl, but also was retitled Whip It, I assume, because in the credits of the movie, it's credited as Whip It.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So I'm thinking that they re-released it under the title Whip It to tie in with the movie.
They might have, yeah. I didn't find anything about that in my research.
It's interesting, because that would make sense.
I would bet that's probably the case. It probably got re-released.
Yeah. We have all of our normal segments. We have Let Me Sum Up, Guess Who, even have a Lost in Adaptation this week, so we're going to get right into it with our first segment. Let me sum up.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
So, I assume these are pretty similar.
Yeah, they're pretty similar.
Cool. Especially because, as we mentioned in the prequel episode, Shauna Cross, who is the author of the novel, also wrote the screenplay. Mm-hmm. And as we mentioned in the prequel, did it at the same time, basically, and shopped the story as both a movie and a book at the same time. And then the novel, or the script, was also further influenced by Drew Barrymore and other writers. But Shauna Cross has the singular writing credit on it. So they were developed at the same time, so the story is pretty similar. We'll obviously talk about those differences, but I'm just going to go ahead and briefly sum up the plot of Whip It, the film. If you haven't seen Whip It, it is available to rent on Amazon. It's like $4 or something like that. So you can stream it. It's not available to stream anywhere for free, unfortunately. At least not. It may be if you have like Stars or something. I don't know. We didn't look for that, but it wasn't in terms of like Netflix or anything. So the plot of Whip It is Bliss something or another, Candiver or something like that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Is a 16, 17-year-old girl living in a small town in Texas. She does pageants because her mother did pageants, and her mother likes her to do pageants, so she does pageants. That's where we kind of meet her at the beginning of the story, is in a pageant. But she's sort of grown out of that phase of her life. She's not into it anymore. She's interested in sort of more alternative things, which... in the opening scene, we see her, she's dyeing her hair, or she has dyed her hair blue. She's sort of hitting that point in her life where she's sort of, trying to figure out who she is and that sort of thing, and doesn't think she's a pageant girl anymore. And she goes shopping and runs into some roller derby girls who are there advertising that they have a bout coming up, an exhibition bout. And her friend Pash go to this bout. She loves it, falls in love with it, thinks it's super cool. And they tell her, well, you should come try out. And so she does, and she kind of goes through the process of trying out and then getting on the team and kind of falling in love with the sport. And then she's hiding it from her parents, so there's turmoil there because they don't know about it. She kind of lies to them about what she's doing so that she can go to these practices. She also lies to the team about being old enough to skate because she's not technically old enough to be on the team. You have to be 21 in the movie to be on the team, and she's only 17, but she lies about being 21 so that she can skate. She's really good, and she ends up elevating her team that she becomes a part of in the roller derby league from the worst in the league to competing for the top spot in the competition, or in their league. And it all comes to a head where she has there's also a boy subplot that's not super important to the story, but there's a boy subplot where she kind of falls in love with this dude who ends up being an asshole, breaking her heart kind of thing. She has a falling out with her friends and her parents all at the same time, and it leads to the night of the big Derby championship and the night of the big beauty pageant that was coming up. She's going to do the beauty pageant for her mom, but ultimately her dad is like, no, and realizes that she loves roller derby and basically says, no, go do that. And she goes and does roller derby. And we'll talk about what happens at the league championship later. But her mom comes and sees her and kind of learns to at least a little bit accept what her daughter is becoming, and that sort of transition out of what she wanted her daughter to be. Happy ending, relatively speaking. We all learned a little something. So that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. All right. So if you didn't see the film, that's roughly the plot. Now we're going to do Let Me Guess Who. No, Guess Who, not Let Me Guess Who. Combine the segments there.
Who are you?
No one of consequence.
I must know.
Get used to disappointment.
Okay.
So Guess Who segment is the game show portion of the show where Katie is going to read character descriptions from the book and see if I can guess what character from the movie it is describing. How many do we have?
We've got 4 today.
Okay.
I find myself face to face with a fierce platinum blonde sporting blue streaks that I hate to admit look better on her than they ever did on me. Not to mention the killer mermaid tattoo covering her left arm.
Okay. The platinum blonde, there's a couple in the movie. The first one that jumps to my mind, I think it's Eva Destruction, I believe, is the one that's blonde. Like super platinum blonde, but she's also not really a main character because she's not on the team that Bliss ends up on. My guess with the tattoo covering her arm, Kristen Wiig's character is kind of blondish, and also has a whole sleeve of tattoos on at least one of her arms. I don't remember. I think it's her left arm. She doesn't have blue in her hair. I don't think any of them really do in the movie, at least not that I specifically remember.
Barrymore's got like a couple different colors,
yes,
but not specifically.
So it could be Drew
blue.
Barrymore because I think she also has tattoos on her arm, and I don't remember her. Oh, she's Ashley Smashley Simpson. I'm going to say I don't remember Kristen Wiig's character's name. I feel like they don't say it that much. I'm sure they do, but I'm going to say that that's Kristen Wiig's character.
Well, you're right.
Okay.
In the book, that skater's name is Malice in Wonderland.
Okay.
But she's the equivalent character
Gotcha.
to Kristen Wiig, whose name in the movie was Maggie Mayhem.
Maggie Mayhem.
Which was Shauna Cross's, the author's
name.
actual derby name.
There you go. Interesting. All right. 1 for 1. Crushing it.
I took one look at her 50s pencil skirt and homemade skull earrings. Not only is she hilarious and crazy smart, but she is the most beautiful Arab-American bombshell this side of the Pecos River.
Where's the Pecos River?
It's in Texas.
Okay, fair enough. I guess it is, but that's an interesting way to say that. Is there any specific Arab quote-unquote Americans in the movie? I'm trying to think of the pencil skirt. Who's wearing a pencil skirt in the movie? I guess the people that could be there's the team that is, and I think the teams are different in the book, but there's the team that has they're like the schoolgirls, is like their thing.
The Holy Rollers.
The Holy Rollers, yeah, they're like Catholic schoolgirl type thing, so it's not really a pencil skirt, but, and I mean, because they also, I feel like some of the scouts, what is the girls?
Scouts.
The Hurl Scouts. I think some of them might have skirts. This could literally be anybody because, again, I don't remember anybody having a specific ethnicity mentioned in the movie, so I have no idea who this could be. I'll guess that it's I don't know. I don't have a guess.
It's Pash. It's her best friend.
Fuck. That makes sense. A little bit makes sense, I guess.
She's a little more like alternative.
Yeah, because she's not particularly alternative
like presented
in the movie.
as in the movie.
Yeah, she doesn't. No, yeah, in the movie, like Ellen Page is like the more alternative-y one, and Pash is more like, I don't know.
Sure, her like the clothes she wears are more like fit to the style of the era, kind of.
She's
like what was popular, quote unquote.
Yeah, but like with an edge to it slightly, like
with the off the shoulder tops and like
it's
what she wears a lot in the movie.
Yeah. That makes sense, I guess. Because I don't know. I couldn't even begin to speculate what ethnicity Aaliyah Shankar
I
is.
actually looked it up when I was reading the book because I knew that she played that character. And I was reading the book and I saw that character was of Middle Eastern descent. And I was like, oh no, did they whitewash her? But I looked, her dad, I think, is Middle Eastern.
Okay.
So.
Her name is distinct. And
Yeah.
Felt like there, but I would, like I said, I wouldn't even begin to speculate. I would just be guessing. Like I have no idea in terms of like her last name, where that hails from. So,
and who knows? That could be an Americanized version of something or a stage name. I don't know.
No idea.
I don't know enough about her as
Fair
a
enough.
person.
I don't either. Her father's from Iraq.
Yeah.
It doesn't say anything about his name being Americanized, but
Who knows?
who knows?
If you happen to be an indie rock loving, thrift store prowling, homemade t-shirt wearing, blue hair dyeing misfit girl.
I don't understand. Is this a description?
That was the closest that we got to a description.
So
for this
how am I
character.
supposed to, so those words apply to a character?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, okay. That's Bliss. Or whatever her character's name is.
Yeah, it's Bliss.
Yeah. Is it Bliss in the book?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's Bliss then.
Yeah, the sentence is taken out of context.
Okay, I was so confused by but that makes sense. I was like, those are all things she does, except for maybe the homemade t-shirt. I think that one might be a homemade t-shirt. Because she definitely listens to indie rock. She definitely goes to thrift stores in the movie. And she dyes her hair blue in the movie in the beginning. And I think that one t-shirt that she wears several times is covered in safety pins that I think she did into a design. It looks like to me, but I could be wrong. Anyway, so I think those all do actually apply to the movie as well.
My eyes follow the paint-stained brogues up to a pair of weathered jeans, a threadbare t-shirt, and last but definitely not least, a shock of messy ink black hair.
This is the douche. I don't know, Oliver, I think is his name.
His name's Oliver.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, it's him.
Is his name Oliver in the book?
His name is Oliver in the book.
Okay, there you go.
He's kind of a stereotypical young adult. He's got the jet black hair, and I couldn't find a good way to pull a quote out, but he also has emerald green eyes.
Ah, yes.
So
yeah, he's the quintessential male love interest of a young adult fiction novel or semi-fiction novel. Yeah, makes sense. All right, so 3 for 4. I missed the Pash one. Mm-hmm. Oh well,
not bad.
Not too bad. I could have got that one if I considered it, but I was like, nah. Anyways, all right, that's it for the fun game show segment. We're going to get into my questions now and really get into the nitty-gritty, figure out what was in the book.
Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone.
The what?
Honestly, don't you two read?
Was that in the book? As I watch the movie, I come up with questions that I want to know if they were from the book, if they were added for the film, and vice versa. So, first question. Does Bliss accidentally dye her hair blue before a beauty pageant? I say accidentally. She does it on purpose, but she thinks it's temporary when she does it in the film.
So she accidentally has blue hair.
Yes, she accidentally permanently dyes her hair blue and has blue hair at a beauty pageant.
No, she doesn't accidentally dye it blue. She does dye it blue on purpose throughout the book. She just has blue hair.
Does she have blue hair at beauty pageants?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Does her mom, and that's just maybe a point of contention with her and her mom as opposed to a reveal?
Yeah, it's not specifically mentioned as a point of contention, but based on her and her mom's relationship, we would assume it's probably a point of contention, yeah.
But it's not a surprise to her mother at one of the beauty pageants
No.
in the book. Gotcha. Like it is in the film. I gotta ask about this line. It's in the trailer, and I think one of the only there's 2 lines I recognized because I'd never seen this film, but I'd seen the trailer several times. And this line, and there was one other one that stuck out to me as sort of quintessential young adult coming of age dialogue. Mm-hmm. That's great for a trailer, and I wanted to know if this came from the book. And that line is, Bliss works at she's a waitress at a diner, and some of her high school friends or people from her high school are there. And one of them is an old friend of hers, who they're no longer friends, and I don't remember that character's name.
Her name is Corby in the book. I think
it is in the
movie.
It's something like that in the movie, because I couldn't tell what it was, and I was like, because it's not a common name, I assume it's a nickname or something. But Corby, and Corby says to her, "So are you like alternative now?" And Bliss responds, "Alternative to what?" And it's a fun line. Is it from the book?
It's not.
Yeah, it felt like a movie line.
It's a good trailer.
It's a great trailer line.
Yeah.
It's a great trailer line. It's one of the perfect. It's like when you're going through trying to figure out what to put in the trailer, you're like, boom, that line. Because Ellen Page also delivers it masterfully. This is like 2 years after Juno. I looked up because I was like, is this before or after Juno? I thought it was after. It is. And yeah, she's great in this. We'll talk about it. So this is an interesting dynamic over the course of the whole movie, is the relationship between Bliss and her mom, played by Marcia Gay Harden. I can't remember her mom's name. I don't know how much they say it, but is the dynamic of their relationship and sort of the push and pull between her mom wanting certain things for her daughter and wanting her daughter to be certain things, but also being a little bit supportive at times and obviously caring deeply for her daughter and loving her. And that sort of push and pull, it feels really good in the movie. It feels really real. And the one scene in particular that I thought about it was that really first initially kind of did a great job capturing that dynamic was when she goes, "Oh, do you want to go shopping?" and takes her to Austin, to go to a thrift store. And Ellen Page picks out some boots that she really likes, like some Doc Martens kind of boot things that she really likes.
Combat boot.
Yeah, like combat boots. And she asks her mom, like, "What do you think?" And her mom's like makes a joke about at least they don't have duct tape on them or something like that. But you can also when Ellen Page looks at herself in the mirror or something and smiles like really big, you see her mom like smile, and like you can tell that she's, even though this isn't necessarily the way that she would prefer her daughter to be, quote unquote, she still likes that her daughter is happy in this moment and like feels good about, you know what I mean? Like that dynamic in that particular scene felt really well done, really well crafted, and it was the sort of beginning of this dynamic or this complex relationship. Is the relationship similar in the book?
Yeah, she has a complex relationship with her mom in both the book and the movie, which was something that I enjoyed about both mediums. It's, in my experience, very true to the teenage years. Hi, Mom.
No, I think it's true for 99, for most people.
Yeah.
And it's I thought too that was the strongest aspect. I have notes about it later in like the odds and ends, just kind of the general note section. But I thought that was the strongest part of the whole film, was the performances, and those specific core relationships felt really well written and really realistic, and complex and layered in a way that sometimes you don't get in like sort of young adult coming of age tales. A lot of times you do, when the good ones, and we've talked about them in some of them, but other times they're a little I think
it's something that's easy to tip into like caricature. But I think the movies especially did a really good job of showing that kind of layered complexity.
It reminded me a lot of like Lady Bird, and Lady Bird I think is a masterpiece of a film, whereas this is not quite a masterpiece of a film. This is a very good film in my opinion, but not like there's a lot of it's been a long time since I've seen Lady Bird, since we watched it, but it reminded me of that, and that's a similar exploring a similar dynamic between mother and daughter. With a little less drama, potentially. Lady Bird, from my memory, it's been a year or two since we watched it. It had a little more drama between them than in this one. So eventually, after Bliss decides she wants to do roller derby and sees it and falls in love with it, and she goes and tries out. When she shows up, they're like, well, actually, I think it's when when they tell her to come try out, I think is when it happens. But they say, oh, but you got to be 21. How old are you? And she says, I'm 22. And they're like, oh, okay. So she lies. She's actually 17 in the movie. Is that an element, a dynamic of the story in the book, her lying about being old enough?
Yes.
Okay.
The lie is a little bit less intense in the book. She's 16 and she says she's 18.
See, that was what I thought was interesting, and I think you're right about why they do this later. You have a note about it.
Yeah.
Why they change it for the movie, because 18 makes sense because you're a legal adult.
And you do have to be 18 to skate.
Yeah, to be like
to be on a roller derby
because
team.
you got to sign the legal release form or whatever saying if I hurt myself, blah blah blah. You know, like and otherwise you would have to have your parents' permission, which the movie does address, but the movie makes that number 21, which makes no sense in terms of like because you're an adult at 18, so you could. But we'll talk about why they make that change later, and I think you're 100% right as to why they make it 21 instead of 18. Is there so in the movie there's this character named Iron Maiden played by Juliette Lewis, who is she's on the best roller derby team in the league. And the way the league works, I don't know if we'll ever really talk about this specifically, but the way the league works in the movie, and this is a realistic thing, that the league it's like all in Austin, but there's like 5 teams that like when you join the league, you get put onto one of these 5 teams, and then those teams compete with each other for like the championship or whatever. So but they don't, because like the way your league works and stuff, like our city's roller derby team competes against other cities. Yeah. And this one doesn't do that, but they're also a big enough city.
Right. We live in a small town.
Yeah.
With other small towns surrounding it. And occasionally we skate against like teams from like St. Louis, which is kind of the nearest big city. But we only have the one team here. Yeah, they don't
have quite enough people for your own league. But I would imagine if you go to like big cities, that there's enough people within the city to just compete. Now they also travel and play other teams and stuff, but you could just compete with your own city.
Yeah, and especially at the time when Derby was going through a bit of a renaissance. Yeah. I imagine you in a big city like Austin, you would have enough people to have a league with several teams.
Yeah. Yep. So, anyways, one of the people on one of the best team in the league, her name is Iron Maiden, and she's just a giant jerk and a bully over the whole movie, and she has a bit of a character arc that we'll discuss. But she's a big bully most of the movie, and like a kind of a caricature of a bully. And we'll get into some of the details. But is that character in the book?
She does have a direct equivalent. In the book, that character's name is Dynamite.
Okay.
She's a little bit different. We don't ever see her being kind of that bully character to anyone but Bliss. Yeah. In the book. And she's not like quite as much of a bully as she is in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the thing that stuck out to me in the movie, is that it felt like when I said a caricature of a bully, I think Juliette Lewis does a good job, and I like where her character goes, and I like sort of the overall character arc of her, and like her reasoning in the movie for why she's a bully makes sense to me. Like it's a motivation that makes sense, and I get sort of the resentment she has for Ellen Page's character, but also the actions she goes through in the movie, and I get it's for the fun, for the drama of the film. But there she's like throwing food at Ellen Page and like tossing her into hot tubs and like literally shoving her in lockers.
Yeah, she does literally shove her into. And
I think there's it's over the top, and I get that it's on purpose, and that it's because also Ellen Page is a high school student, so it's like this sort of mirroring her experience of high school to some extent. And so I don't think it doesn't work. I just thought it was a little like it's a little over the top for her motivation that we ultimately find out. It feels a little too like classical high school bully. I don't know.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think I would make kind of a pros and cons list with her character for what the book did versus what the movie did. The book's portrayal of her was a little subtler. Yeah. But the book doesn't really give her a motivation. Oh, okay. The way that the movie does, which I'll talk about later.
Yeah, because I actually really, like I said, I really liked their motivation, which we'll talk about. So, this is the thing that we'll talk about. a fair amount over the course of this episode is the depiction of roller derby in the movie. But one very specific instance that I want to talk about is, does the book have instances of people like literally elbowing people in the face and punching them and breaking their noses and stuff?
No.
Okay. So it sounds like potentially the book is a slightly more realistic portrayal
Potentially.
of roller derby. Yeah, it is funny because the movie kind of tries to have it both ways, and we'll talk about it. It kind of tries to have its cake and eat it too, in the sense of like, this isn't the roller derby your parents watched on TV that was like professional wrestling, but it kind of is still. Like, but the movie version still kind of is because it's a movie version, so it needs to be like...
It needs to be, dynamic and...
super dynamic.
There needs to be drama to it.
Yeah. But yeah, so we get people literally punching people in roller derby matches, and like, and not even necessarily like just out of anger, but just like, it's like anger mixed with like just like elbowing people for like as a strategy,
yeah.
which is not allowed in current day roller derby. Now who knows, maybe again at the time the rules were a little more,
and maybe they were a little more fast and loose,
with the rules. Maybe this is like the heyday of like like you said, the sort of renaissance, the rebirth of roller derby, and maybe the rules weren't quite so like established, and the leagues were a little more rough and tumble. It's possible. I don't know. But apparently it doesn't happen in the book, so... Yeah. Not to say that nobody has ever punched anybody on a roller derby rink. I'm sure it's happened. I'm just saying that... I mean, I've never seen it. I've only been to a handful of roller derby matches, or half dozen or whatever, but we've never seen it. I would be surprised if it happens very often.
You would be in the box so fast.
Well, you would be in the box, but also you would never be allowed to play again, I feel like. Most teams would just probably, maybe not never, but like I would bet, if I had to guess, that if you punched another player on the rink or on the track, that things would be like, you're going to sit it out for a while. Maybe not.
Yeah. I don't know what the specific rules are for like fighting, like if you can get like suspended, or I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. And that would be an interesting question, because my guess would be that there's some sort of like, maybe not specific rules, but like kind of more like 3-strike rule or something, where it's like, but if you start an all-out fight on the,
I think certainly if it was something that you did consistently,
yes,
that's like how we kind of see like Drew Barrymore's character
would not be
does it like consistently. I think your team wouldn't want you.
No. Because you would, and that's the thing the movie doesn't ever go into, is in current modern day flat track roller derby, like at least through the Flat Track Association or whatever, there are penalties, and like you can get penalties and go to the penalty box, like in hockey, basically. And it literally gives the other team a power play, like in hockey, essentially, because you're down a skater. And so if you were doing that consistently, it would be ruining games for your team.
And especially like she's the jammer. Like if the jammer goes to the penalty box,
it's real
you
bad.
Don't even have a chance to score.
No, it's real bad. It's one thing if like if a blocker goes, but it's real bad if a jammer goes. They call it something too. It's called like a power jam or something. If one team's jammer goes to the penalty box, it's called like a power jam or a super jam. I remember them saying that.
Yeah,
it is. I don't remember the exact phrase, but I remember them saying that at games that we've gone to. It's got some name when the jammer's in the penalty box, because the other person can just score as much as they can get, basically as much as they can during that time. All right. So there's a big focus in the movie on the idea of plays and running plays. And this is a thing that stuck out to me and again, I don't play roller derby. I've never even been to a practice, but I've watched roller derby, like I said, 4 or 5 times or whatever. And seen videos and stuff. And to me, the idea of plays, I'm sure there are some, but it doesn't strike me as a super prominent aspect of roller derby, and I could be wrong about this. I'm happy to be corrected, and not necessarily that you would know entirely. I'm just saying in general, if somebody out there does know who's listening to this, the idea of running like plays routinely in roller derby seems not like a thing that would happen, and the movie focuses on it a lot. So one is the focus on plays in the book, and 2, the specific instance in the movie that I thought was definitely a movie ad was that the coach for Bliss's team at one point, because he's so fed up with his team not wanting to run his plays or whatever, that he goes and gives a play to the enemy team, and they run it and score a bunch of points or whatever. And so kind of both of that's my A and B part of that question.
I recall there being like mentions of plays in the book or like strategy.
Yeah.
It's not a focus. There's no scene where the coach gives his playbook to the other team. But also in the book, the Hurl Scouts aren't presented as like in the movie, they're like the worst team in the league and they're like unmotivated to get any better. Yeah. They don't care. They're just there to like hang out and have a good time. Yeah. And that's not the case in the book.
Interesting. Okay.
They're just like any other team in the league.
Yeah, I'm not. I didn't mean to imply that there's not strategy, because there's definitely, you can tell. There's definitely strategy and all that. I'm not implying that there's not strategy and even plays. I just the extent to and there's definitely not plays like there are in the movie, because they're ridiculous cartoon plays, which is, we'll talk about that later. But I just the sort of focus on, we got to run these plays and this play and that play, and we got to try this. It's like, to me, that seemed unlikely in terms of how actual roller derby is probably played.
It's not something that I can really speak to.
Right, yeah.
Like, it's not something that I have any experience with.
Yeah.
There are definitely, like, different configurations that blockers can get in. I don't know if that counts as a play.
And see, maybe that would count as a play, quote unquote. But to me, that's a little different. That's more of like a blocking scheme versus like a play.
And there are different like moves that you can do. So I could see where you could like combine moves to make like a play. Like I said, it's not something that I can really speak to. So I'm hesitant to say either way.
I know.
If that is or isn't a factor of roller derby.
Yeah. I know. But I still wanted to bring it up just because I thought that it was something that felt very, I don't know, fanciful.
I mean, definitely in the movie, some of the stuff that they show is not. It's not realistic.
Yes, no, that for sure I had no problem.
But it's a movie.
Yeah. At one point in the movie, one of the games that they're at gets busted by the fire marshal who comes in and makes them all leave, and then the cops are also there, and a bunch of people get busted, and this includes Pash being arrested for being a minor with carrying a beer or whatever. She says it's open container, but it's minor without it's also open container, but also anyways.
Yeah.
Because she's also a minor, so I feel like that's the more important thing. But anyways, she gets busted. Does that happen in the book?
There is an important bout that gets broken up by the fire marshal for having too many people there. Pash does not get arrested when that happens, though, which I will talk more about later.
All right. Is there a swimming pool sex scene?
There is not.
That was a thing.
That was a thing.
It was a choice.
They held their breath for a very long time.
Held their breath for so long. And this movie at times dabbles with like surrealism. Dabbles. Like in the tiniest bit, but like not really. Not in a way that felt like it should have committed further, I feel like, maybe, if it was going to do that. But yeah, the underwater sex scene. And I think there's some symbolism there that works with that scene. They don't have sex that we see in the film, but they're undressing under the water and making out and stuff, and it is to be implied that they do copulate, but it's a technical term. But there's some symbolism there with the idea of her being in over her head, and, and the sort of
too deep
on top of the sort of magical nature of your first time, which I think it's implied that this is, for at least for Bliss, and sort of the surreal nature of them being underwater, and it is very magical, quote unquote. So I think it works as a scene overall, but it's a little, I don't know. I didn't love it, but I thought it had.
I have some thoughts on that as compared to what happened, but I have that in a later section.
Okay, sorry, I won't go on and on about it then. This is a specific line that is mentioned in the movie that Pash says, and I kind of want to have a little brief discussion about it here because I think there's a discussion to be had potentially. At one point, this is after Pash is arrested and she's mad at Bliss because Bliss basically abandoned her after the roller derby
Right,
game.
yeah, she abandons her. She goes off with Oliver, which is when Pash gets arrested.
Yeah. And so she's feeling very abandoned by Bliss, and she's really mad at her. And she's talking to, Dwayne, their manager at the diner.
Yeah, the Birdman.
The manager at the diner. Is he in the book?
Yes.
Okay. I should have asked. I didn't ask about Dwayne, but he's an interesting character. But she's like venting to Dwayne about how Bliss abandoned her. And she has a line where she says basically something along the lines of, Bliss left me to go run around with all these she-males or something like that. I don't know the full context of the line or the full quote. Something along those lines. First off, simple question, is that line in the book?
That line is not in the book.
Okay. Second question, oof.
Yeah.
Third question, it's not a question, I guess, but third question, is it possible to do that? So, is it possible that you can have a line like that in a moment or a film like this, and even though it's quote unquote problematic, it still makes sense and isn't necessarily problematic, if that makes sense? So here's my argument, is that in this moment, Pash is very upset, very emotional, and is lashing out in the meanest way she can think of. And so she resorts to basically a slur as a form of just in an emotional moment of anger, and that maybe because the movie doesn't necessarily seem to imply potentially that she should say that, but it also doesn't comment on her that she shouldn't say that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I know it's complicated, but
it is. I think it's the way, and there's not a lot of moments like this in this movie, which I think makes this potentially more unfortunate, but it is a moment I think that dates the movie in an unflattering way.
It does, yeah.
Because that's definitely not something that maybe we would have been as concerned about in 2009
for sure.
as we are in 2020.
Yeah, for sure. That's a line that wouldn't probably be written today.
No,
At least
I don't think
most
so.
people.
And not in a movie like this.
No. But my argument being that, like I said, my argument isn't that it's not that my argument is that her saying it in that moment of anger, it's not justified. Like not that it's ever justified, but you see what I'm saying? Like is
it understandable in that moment?
Not that it's understandable, we shouldn't, that you can say bad, awful things, that a person can say bad, awful things in a moment of weakness, and that isn't an endorsement of that phrase. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if you're one of your protagonists in a movie, in a moment where they're emotionally fraught, says something quote unquote problematic, that isn't necessarily an endorsement of that. Clearly isn't an endorsement of that problematic thing they said. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, so somebody being like calling somebody a she-male in the context of the scene that she did is potentially not problematic, because she's not like, they're not like joking about it. They're not like. Mm-hmm. They're not like, it's not like her and Ellen Page, like, you know, sitting around like hanging out and then like
just quipping. Like she's like really upset and tries to say something hurtful, and so the thing she says that is hurtful is this bad thing. Do you see what I'm saying? And that maybe it's okay for a line like that to be in a movie in that context. Maybe not. I don't know. That's what I'm kind of asking. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I think it could be, but I don't think that. I think you would have to do it differently.
Okay. For
it to be quote unquote okay.
Yeah.
I think maybe you would have to have not a full on character arc.
Right.
Around like her learning something from that, but at least maybe like a moment of like acknowledging or something.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I think the thing that would make it work, if you're going to do that, and it would have to be with the viewpoint of today, because I think you're right in the sense that in 2009, at the time this was written, people weren't as cognizant about that type of thing. And so I think
it probably wouldn't even register for the majority of people.
It would just blow past. Like, you wouldn't, even quote unquote woke people in 2009, it would just blow right past, because it was just not, I say that, it's not entirely true. There are people who would be calling it out. It's not like 2009 was 50 years ago.
Definitely, like, fewer people than there would be now, is my point.
Yes, for sure. So I think you're right that that the way to do it, if you're going to do something like that and have it be a moment of weakness where she lashes out in a hateful and hurtful way, is to, I think if you're going to either have whoever she's doing it to call her out on it in some way.
Yeah.
And now she's doing it to Dwayne, and who knows, again, they're living in small town Texas, if his character would register with him at all. But maybe if she had lashed out and said that to Ellen Page might have called her out. Like, Bliss might have called her out on it.
Yeah.
And then there could have been a moment of recognition and sort of growth because of that. You know what I mean? Like, if she had said that to Ellen Page, like literally that exact line to Ellen Page, and Ellen Page had been like, you know, I don't know, I'm not writing the scene right now, but had called her out on it, basically. And then Pash had maybe not responded immediately, but later had apologized or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's the way you would go about doing that.
I think, too, potentially a better way to have a scene like that is to have her lash out at the person she's mad at.
Yeah.
Like, and say, but say like specifically insult her.
Yeah.
Rather than insult like a group of people who are not there.
Yeah, that's true. But again, I think there has to be a way to so. Oh, this is a whole complicated topic, but I really think you in film and in any medium, there has to be a way for even good characters to have problematic flaws and say things that are regressive and terrible. Okay. And you know what I mean?
I agree with that, but I think where this particular example stumbles is that it's not presented as a problematic flaw for her character.
Yes.
It's just a moment that happens.
Yes. I agree. And I agree. And that's what I was kind of getting at. Yeah. I think that's a discussion I want to have. And I agree completely. Yeah, I think it needed to be handled differently. And again, the reason it wasn't was because the year it was, I think, more than anything. And it's just it's not something that everybody was super cognizant of at the time. But for sure, I just wanted to talk about it because I thought it's an interesting topic that's not quite as simple as like, you know, oh, this word is in here, therefore it's a terrible scene and like super problematic. Like I think it is to some extent, but I think it's more complicated than that because of how it's handled. Or it could be more complicated than that, depending on how it was handled.
Yeah.
Final couple questions here. This is when the movie started to get to me. Daniel Stern, who most of our listeners will most recognize as one of the wet bandits from Home Alone. Most recognized. It's not his only role. He's been in plenty of things, but most famous role he is Marv. No. One of them, I can't remember his character's name, in Home Alone. He's one of the thieves. He plays Bliss's dad in this movie, and they have a very interesting and also similarly sort of complicated but slightly less complicated relationship than Bliss and her mom.
Yeah, they kind of have a non-relationship at the beginning of the movie. Like, not that they don't have it, but they're not like close, it seems like. Yeah,
they're not close. But he seems to kind of understand her a little more than the mom and like get her a little more than the mom potentially, but also isn't as close. So yeah, it's interesting. Again, it's a good dad relationship where he maybe understands her more, but also they're not as close because dads traditionally, you know, sometimes aren't as close with their kids. It depends. It's not a blanket statement, but
It's a trope.
It's a trope, but it's also I think it's also a societally enforced.
Yeah, it's a symptom of gender roles and patriarchy and yes.
But at the end of the movie, he's the one who basically gets her to not do the beauty pageant and instead go do roller derby when he realizes how important it is to her. He actually, in the movie, he sees a video of her on like the website of her doing it. And how much she loves it and how good she is at it and that sort of thing. And he's like, oh, wow. And that she's on the poster and stuff. And so he vouches for her and tells the mom, no, she's not going to do this. She needs to go do this thing she loves. But the line in the movie... So first off, the kind of general broad view is the dad do that. But more specifically, I want to know if this line is in the movie because it really got me right in the feels. Is he's talking to the mom when he's going to confront her at the beauty pageant. And he says, I can take losing the money because they paid $800 for a dress or something like that for this beauty pageant.
Yeah.
And she's like, we paid for this dress already. She's got to do the beauty pageant. And her dad says, I can take losing the money. I'm not okay with our kid losing the chance to be happy. It's a great line, and he does a great job with it. He like eats it a little bit, and it's like eats the line a little bit. It's a great performance. But it also like catches you right in the feels. So both of those elements, are they in the book?
That specific line isn't in the book.
Okay.
It is her dad who ultimately convinces her mom to kind of release her from the pageant and let her go skate. But that actually isn't explicitly shown in the book. We found out afterwards that he's the one who did that. Her dad doesn't really have an arc in the book like he does in the movie. So there aren't as many feels for that like relationship building. Okay.
But the general idea, he is the one who pushes her to skate or to do roller derby at the end. But it's not as sort of maybe
it's not as much of a moment.
Yeah, not as much of a moment as it is in the movie. Final question. It's the big final match. It's the Hurl Scouts, I can never remember their name, versus the Holy Rollers in a clash of the Titans. First and second place teams competing for the championship. And Bliss's team is the Hurl Scouts, and the Holy what's her name? Well, in the movie, she's now I can't remember.
Iron Maiden.
Iron Maiden, and in the book, she's something else.
Dynamite.
It's her team versus Bliss's team, and a big back and forth battle comes down to Bliss versus Iron Maiden, and you think maybe Bliss and the Hurl Scouts are going to pull it off, but at the last minute they lose and they get second place, and Iron Maiden and the Holy Rollers win. Is that what happens in the book?
No, they win in the book.
I don't like it. I really like the movie's version of having, and we'll talk about, there's like numerous elements to why I like it. One of them is Iron Maiden's character, and another one is just sort of a more general thing. But I really like that in the movie that they get second place, that they don't win. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
No, I agree with that.
Okay. We'll talk about it more because we have kind of specific reasons why, but we'll get to that. Okay. That's it for Was That in the Book? Got one question for Lost in Adaptation.
Just show me the way to get out of here, and I'll be on my way.
Where is it lost?
Yes, and I want to get unlost as soon as possible.
In Lost in Adaptation, if there's anything I was confused about that I didn't understand, and I'm hoping there's more context in the book, this is where I ask it. I really only have one, and it's not so much confusion. I was just wondering if it was expanded on in the book. This felt like it fit more in the Lost in Adaptation section than Was That in the Book. In the movie, Colby and her boyfriend are sort of like bullies to Bliss a little bit. And we know that that Bliss and Colby used to be friends, and now they are no longer. And it's never addressed why. And we only see them on camera together like 3 times in the whole film. And it's a little underdeveloped. And I'm wondering if there's maybe more in the book.
There's not much more explanation in the book. Like, we don't ever get an explicit explanation for what happened with their friendship.
There wasn't like an event.
Yeah, there wasn't an event, that, at least not that the text spoke of.
There wasn't like a stealing a boyfriend or a some sort of violation.
She does interact with Corby a little bit more in the book, so I didn't necessarily feel like I needed more of an explanation.
Yeah.
In the movie, the other relationship does get pushed to the back burner.
Yeah.
It's definitely a little bit underdeveloped. Caveat, though, I will say that this is also just totally a thing that happens when you start transitioning into adolescence. There's not always a clear or solid explanation for it, friends just go different ways. I think in the movies it results in animosity a little bit more than it does in real life. But that does happen. That's the thing.
No, it definitely does. And I mean, I've experienced that myself. There are people that I was very close friends with in elementary school and middle school that in high school we just weren't
you
friends.
Just get
really
interested
anymore.
in different things.
One of you joins marching band and one of you joins the football team or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it just, and it is, the movies tend to turn that into a more combative relationship than I think it often is, but it is definitely a thing. And so you don't necessarily need. I wasn't looking for like there had to be an explanation or it doesn't make sense or it's bad or anything. But I was just wondering if there was anything more.
And it definitely their setups for the time period. They're the opposite sides of like the coin for girls.
Yeah,
There's
she's a cheerleader dating the football
prep
player
character and the alt. Character.
Alternative to what?
Yeah. To you.
To you. To me, yeah. 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 But, I agree. And I didn't think it necessarily needed anything more. I was just wondering if there was. All right. Katie, I've been talking a lot. It's your turn. Let's find out what was better in the book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
All right, so one of the first things that kind of bugged me in the movie, and I totally get why they did it. Like, I understand. But when she first goes to that initial derby bout, and the announcer, Jimmy Fallon was, like, explaining roller derby as part of his announcing.
Yeah.
Totally understand why it's in there. But it really took me out of the movie.
It's funny you mentioned that because
I felt like it was so clearly for the person. Like, I was like, oh, this is for me watching the movie. And it just kind of took me out of the moment. Now, I was willing to go a little easier on that, like, as we continued through the movie, because they did make it kind of a thing. Like, he continued to do it.
Yeah.
It wasn't just that first opening scene, but it's still, like, it took me out of the world of the story of the film a little bit.
I have to disagree because I think it's funny. I agree and disagree because in the context of the movie, for some reason, it did kind of take me out of it. And I think partially because it felt a little bit like it was added in later almost. But I will say that it didn't, at the same time that I felt that, initially felt like, oh, this feels like he's talking to me, the audience at home, and not the person, the audience in the crowd. But we've been to roller derby matches, and they do that because random people go to roller derby matches and don't know how the rules work. So the announcer, everyone I've been to, goes, here's how the game works. There's a jammer. The jammer tries to, like, every single one we've been to that's happened. So I was like, no, that does happen though. Cause
that's fair.
But I did, I will, like I said, I freely admit that I felt both of those feelings at the same time where I was like, for some reason, the way they do it in the movie felt.
Maybe it's just Jimmy Fallon.
Maybe it's just Jimmy Fallon.
It was Jimmy Fallon.
Because in the way it's done in the movie did kind of take me out of it. But then as I was feeling that, I was like, but no, every single roller derby match I've ever been to has had the announcer explain how roller derby works because most people who go don't know. At least your first, like anybody who's first time, they have to explain it because otherwise you're like, what's happening? Like, I don't know what's happening.
A bunch of kick-ass girls are skating in a circle. That's what's happening.
Right. Well, sure. But, like, you're trying to figure out, like, you're seeing points go up and you're like, what? How? Like, are points what? And even when you know the rules, it's still a little hard to follow. And they make a joke about that in the film. He's like, he even says, like, still you having trouble following it? Don't worry, so am I, or something like that. Because I know, I know, like, most of the general rules, and I still have times where I'm like, wait, how did they get that many points? I'm confused. You know what I mean? Like, and even I get what you're saying, but I also felt like, but that's realistic. But it does still feel weird.
Well, yeah, it's just weird because it is realistic in a way, but it also feels totally not realistic when you're watching the movie.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, why is he doing this?
Yeah.
Anyway. So let's talk about the age difference because they made that change.
Yeah.
In the book, Bliss is 16. She lies to say that she's 18 so that she can skate. In the movie, they say that she has to be 21.
Yeah. And she says she's 22.
Yeah,
which
she
is how
says
old
she's-
Ellen Page actually was.
She says she's 22. She's supposed to be 17
Yeah.
in the movie, which is a bit more of a lie
Yeah.
than 16 to 18. So initially, when that happened, I was like, is she supposed to be already 18, maybe, in the movie? And
Yeah.
they changed it so that she's still
Too
lying
young,
in
yeah.
order to skate, so that she's still too young. And then later on, they specifically say that she's 17. So I was like, no, that's not it.
No.
So I was thinking to myself, and I was like, maybe they did it because all of the other roller girls are clearly quite a bit older.
Quite a bit older, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think you're right. Is that I think because all of the skaters all of the other actresses are like in their 30s,
Yeah,
or like late
not
20s.
that they would have to all be
No,
18, because
no.
I've certainly there are plenty of older.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the people that I skate with are in their 30s. Or
in
I'm
your
in my
30s.
30s.
Yeah.
But I think it could potentially be a thing that takes a viewer out of the
Yeah.
moment, where they're like, oh, you have to be 18, and then they're all like clearly
They all like clearly 20 and 30 year olds.
Yeah.
You're like,
wait a minute.
Why are all of you so old in comparison? Yeah.
So it's an interesting choice. I have it in better in the book. It's
yeah,
it's a little thing.
yeah.
It's not really a better or worse or either here nor there. But it was interesting to me, like trying to kind of suss out like why they made that change, because it doesn't make any sense for the cutoff to be 21.
No.
There's no reason
As
for
we
that.
talked about, it does not make any sense.
I liked Bliss's character arc in the movie better, which I'll talk a bit about later, but I was a little sad that she didn't get to just have blue hair the whole time, because she does in the book. She just has blue hair.
Yeah, she has blue hair in the beginning, and then she dyes it back to...
Her mom immediately takes her to, which is maybe more realistic
Yeah.
for who her mom is.
Yeah.
But yeah, blue hair. We love a good alternatively colored hair in this house.
Yes, we do. We're supportive of the alt hair in this household.
There's a random conversation about crabs. Was that with...
That was Kristen
it
Wiig's character.
Was that Kristen Wiig's character?
It was.
Okay.
Because it felt more like it should have been Drew Barrymore's character.
Yeah.
But it was Kristen
It felt
Wiig's
a
character.
little bit off the wall for her character. And it started as kind of funny, and I ended up feeling like, what are we doing here? While I was watching it. And what was interesting to me was there's a whole thing in the book where they tell Bliss, never date a guy in a band.
Yeah.
Because the guy in a band is going to wreck you. And it's kind of this thing where they're like, where you can tell in that moment that they're older and more experienced than her.
Yeah. More world-wise.
Yeah. But the movie kind of like takes that, which was arguably an important thing in the book, and makes it like this kind of kooky conversation about like, oh, never date your manager because he's going to give you craps.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't really know what to do with that.
That was, let's let Kristen Wiig show off her comedy chops a little bit here.
Yeah.
This is an early Kristen Wiig film.
Yeah.
It's a very early Kristen Wiig film, I realized. Because this is before all of her major big stuff. But yeah, it's kind of, you got Kristen Wiig, let her do a silly scene. I mean, she's good overall in the film, but, that's one of her more comical scenes.
I also didn't really get the joke about Jimmy Fallon's character buying a hot tub but not being allowed in the hot tub. Is it just because he's creepy? I felt like I didn't understand the
that
joke.
Felt like there was probably more there that wasn't. Yeah,
like
that just didn't make the cut.
Yeah, maybe something ended up on the cutting room floor.
Yeah,
but I was
maybe.
like, I don't understand what we're going on about, you guys.
I think the idea is just that they liked making Jimmy Fallon's character be creepy. I think it's sort of maybe a stereotype of like the guy who does announcing for roller derby. It's like a bit. I don't know. I was trying to figure out because he is like there's a moment later in the movie where he has a sign that's like, call me, and then he flips it around and it says STD free.
Yeah.
And he does say like kind of, that's the only other part of the movie that doesn't, and I don't know.
I don't know. Is that a stereotype that the announcer is creepy?
I don't know if it's a stereotype that the announcer's creepy. I I don't know. I can't comment on any of that. I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me if there was sort of the idea of like one of the only dudes involved in roller derby, like maybe
it was kind of pervy. Okay, yeah, I could
is
see
like
that.
maybe probably not maybe. I'm sure that's an unfair stereotype, but I could see that them sort of playing into that, and especially like the announcer, like versus like a guy who's like a ref who like has to know the rules and stuff. Where Jimmy Fallon just shows up drunk and hungover and like yells about hot girls and like fishnet. You know what I mean? Like his character is sort of that quintessential like pervy, like mid 2000s like fun perv.
Yeah.
Like, kind of adorkable pervy dude who like it's fun that he like it's like I don't know whether to stop that fight or whip out the lotion. Whoa. Like that's who he is. And it's a weird. I think that's the only other element that didn't age particularly well.
Yeah,
is sort of the fun perv.
The fun perv.
But it can be, and I think it makes it worse that the fact that they like don't allow him to the hot tub because it very clearly indicates that no, maybe he's just actually like
he's actually
creep,
just a creepy perv
and not like a fun like over the top like while he's announcing, but not actually like a creep. But no, he's actually a creep maybe, which is like sort of unfortunate. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if he's gonna listen to this, but just in case, Stephen K, I don't think you're a creep. He's our announcer.
Like I said, I'm not saying that is a stereotype that makes any sense or anything. I'm just saying that I could see a movie producer or something seeing that role and being like, that's what this role should be.
That's fair.
And sort of shoehorning it into that type of
obnoxious.
Obnoxious blowhard guy who's like a bit, into chicks and a bit oblivious. Yeah, I can just see it morphing into that and that being the role for Jimmy Fallon. I don't know.
So the pool scene where Bliss loses her virginity.
Oh, yeah.
It's cinematic.
Kind of.
Like...
yeah.
I understand... Like, I understand the impulse to want, like, a scene like that in your movie, where it's kind of, like, interestingly shot, and they're doing something that's, like, different.
Yeah.
But...
And like we said, the symbolism-ish, it kind of works.
Symbolism-ish, it kind of works. Moments. In the book, he takes her virginity on a mattress on the floor of his crummy bedroom, and it hurts, and she cries.
Oy.
And there's something so poignantly appropriate about that, especially coming from that guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think the movie's definitely going for more of a pull the rug out from under her.
Mm-hmm.
And so having their relationship be more of a fantasy, like sort of...
No, I get that. Yeah, I get that.
It's we're seeing her idea of it, and sort of her perception of this perfect, dreamy like fantasy of her dating this super cool rock star, and they make love in a swimming pool like it's a music video, and then that all gets pulled out from under her, and that's the third act low point that really puts her on her ass. You know what I mean? So like I get it, and I think it works, but there is definitely. And I think it would have to be a slightly different movie to do the version from the book.
Yeah.
Because
I agree.
The movie doesn't have that sort of hard-hitting, like, reality in it necessarily. Yeah. It's got some really good emotional stuff, but not, like, that kind of emotional stuff.
So there's a teacher in the book who doesn't make it into the movie, and I totally understand why. He's not, like, an important character. But I am going to read you his character description from the book so that you'll understand why I'm a little sad that this person did not make it on screen.
Okay.
He looks exactly like Yoda.
Great start.
Stands maybe 5 foot 2 inches tall in his high-heeled cowboy boots and is a die-hard devotee of Western suits. And when I say Western suits, I don't mean any old just add water cowboy getup. I mean the polyester kind they quit making sometime in the 70s, the kind that came in pastel colors, usually reserved for special issue M&Ms at Easter. Peach, lemon, lavender, green mint. Mr. Smiley has the entire collection and then some.
That would be a character.
Yep. So I totally get why this character was cut. Perhaps Wallace Shawn was not available.
Yeah, that would have been a fun character, and it's a little disappointing, but yeah. It doesn't really play a pivotal
No,
role.
not at all.
Okay.
He's like I don't even know if I'd call him a tertiary character. It's whatever a 4-level character is.
A quartiary.
Yeah, something like that.
That's not the right word. All right, that was it for Better in the Book. Let's go ahead and talk about what was better in the movie.
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
Her little sister is a little aged up. Was one of the first things that I noticed, difference-wise. She's like 4 in the book.
It happens a lot in the movies.
Yeah, in the movie she's like, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah, it's not a
seems
lot,
like. I thought that was a good choice. They don't really utilize the little sister character all that much.
In the book?
Either
in the movie,
either in the book or the movie. But I think you potentially could do a little bit more with her as a character. They have like kind of the cute scene at the end where they're like putting makeup on her, which I think they couldn't have necessarily done with a younger.
Maybe not. It wouldn't have made as much sense.
It wouldn't have made as much sense. I also think it could potentially add a little bit more tension of like, she's already so good at this kind of a thing. Because she is a little bit older.
Oh, you mean like being the model daughter?
Yeah,
type of thing?
yeah, being the model daughter.
Yeah, because that is a dynamic in the movie. Is that Bliss's mom clearly adores her younger sister, who is much more in line with her mom's idea of.
She has more of an aptitude for the pageantry.
Yeah, and from the vibe I got was that probably Bliss used to be that way. More, but then
not in the book. That wasn't how
okay.
she was. No, she was always.
Oh, interesting.
Not.
I guess I didn't know if I don't think I necessarily got that vibe from the movie. Mm-hmm. My vibe would have been more that that she sort of just as she got older,
Yeah.
Kind of wanted to go do her own thing.
I think you could play it either way, and it makes sense. And definitely in the book, she was never interested in pageants.
Okay.
And her sister, they do say that her sister's like. She likes it. She's like a pageant natural.
Yeah.
But
cool.
But I do think it made sense to age her up a little.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that Bliss saw some of the actual roller girls in the thrift shop. In the book, she just sees the poster and like grabs it on her way out.
Yeah, it's a much more impactful scene.
It's more impactful. It's more dynamic.
Yeah.
It's more interesting. There's the random roller girl whose derby name is Jabba the Slut, which made me like laugh out loud.
Yeah, we both chuckled out loud at that one. Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, I'm stealing that. Jabba the Slut. No. Yeah, there aren't a lot of names kind of like that. Like the names in the book aren't really sexual because it's a young adult book, but that was a good one.
Yeah.
I liked the short scene during tryouts that explained Derby.
Yeah.
I felt like that felt a little bit more like it fit within the universe than it did when Jimmy Fallon was explaining it, even though, as we discussed, that does happen.
Yeah.
But I just felt like it fit better there. It felt a little more natural in that scene.
Yeah.
It's also a lot clearer in the movie why Iron Maven / Dynamite dislikes Bliss. Like I said, I think we could make like a kind of a pro-con list and it would maybe even out. But I liked knowing her motivation.
Yeah, and we haven't talked about it, so this is a good place to talk about it. Her motivation, and it's one of the things I really liked about her character eventually, is that when she's first introduced, and for most of the first half of the movie, she's kind of just like a cartoony character, like bully. Mm-hmm. But we find out eventually, she explains to Bliss at one point, they're talking, and it's after, I think this is after she finds out that Bliss is 17, I'm pretty sure. Or even if not, Bliss is still, she thinks she's 22. Either way, we find out that in the movie that she's 36. And she has this monologue about how she's like, I'm 36 years old. And I started doing roller derby 5 years ago. It took me 31 years to find something I really loved and was good at.
Yeah.
And you come in here, you're 22 or 17, however old she knows she is in that moment. And you're already great at it, and you've already found this thing you love, and she resents her for it, and is like jealous.
I mean,
obviously.
it's kind of the classic like aging diva being replaced by the young natural upstart kind of a thing.
But it's even more dynamic than that, because there's the extra layer of, and it also felt something that feels really true to me about derby, because a lot of people I think do find it a little bit later in life, because it's not a super pop, it's not like a generic, a super popular sport like soccer or something that everybody plays when they're little kids or whatever. So it is something that people tend to find later in life, or come to later, quote unquote, in their life than something like soccer or other sports that people fall in love with.
Yeah, it's not like you have an elementary school roller derby team.
Right. So
that'd be dope, though.
Yeah, that would be dope. But there's that added element of, not only is she like the aging diva, or the aging star being replaced by the young upstart, she's the aging star who literally just started doing this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one thing if she had been doing it for 20 years and now she's aging, or whatever.
And how much longer is she going to be able to continue doing it? Yeah, because I mean, it is a sport that's hard on you.
Yeah, it's really hard on you. Yeah, and so you can't do it forever. Like it's a physically demanding sport.
Eventually, your knees are going to go.
Yeah, your knees are going to go, or you're going to blow out a hip or whatever. Like, you're not going to be able to do it for until you're 50 or something. At least not like super competitively. And so it is. I thought that dynamic was really good and made a lot of sense. And finding out her motivation was definitely added a new layer to her character. I still think that maybe she was a little too cartoony.
She's a little too cartoony. But knowing her motivation and understanding that elevated the character in the movie for me a lot.
Yeah.
Because in the book, we don't ever really know what her motivation is for picking on Bliss.
Yeah.
She just kind of doesn't like her. And we could make assumptions about why that is, but it's never explicitly stated. That conflict doesn't have any closure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it adds, not only does it have that great moment where she tells her, like, and it's like I said, it's a great scene and great dialogue, and Juliette Lewis does a great job with it, where she's like, it took me 31 years to find something I love. And that it really, I don't know, it's one of those things that really hits you too, if you're somebody who's still, who has a hard time finding at times things you're passionate about. And then to actually, you can identify with somebody who's like, I finally found something that I'm really into, and this fucking 17-year-old is like great at it.
Yeah.
Like, fuck you. Like, you know what I mean? And so, like, you can definitely, as a 32-year-old, or almost 32-year-old, you can definitely, somebody in their 30s, I think, can definitely identify with that, at least to some extent. And I think it makes it a little more powerful. And it is, I thought it was a great scene, and it definitely a good choice to add that backstory and that.
Yeah. Oh, no, for sure. Something else I really appreciated in the movie was that they showed Bliss learning to skate. And like, I mean, she already kind of knows how to skate because she did it as a kid.
Yeah, she's skated for a while.
But they show her like learning to play and like gradually getting better and like improving her skill.
And practicing a lot.
Which is very realistic.
Yeah.
And whereas in the book, she's kind of amazing, like right off the bat.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the movie,
she is a little bit.
She is a little bit. You can tell she has kind of a natural aptitude for it.
Yeah. But there's a montage.
Yeah, there's a montage of her training and learning how to do it and getting better and better, which is definitely not something that the book presents.
Yeah. Spending, nights or something out skating circles around her subdivision or whatever. And it definitely, Yeah, and
I think it was something that kind of bugged me about the book, because it was like, oh, she goes to tryouts and she's a little rusty, But then she's kind of like amazing by the end of tryouts, and I was like, okay, sure.
Yeah. But the movie does say, I thought, because I even in the movie, I was like, man, she got good at that really fast. But the movie has one line that I think also helps explain that. Because at first she says, well, I haven't worn skates since they had Barbies on them. And to me, that implied, like, I had a pair of skates when I was 4. Mm-hmm. And, like, but Pash says to her, I didn't, like, when Ellen Page brings up to her, we should do roller derby, Pash is like, I'm not doing roller derby. And she says, I didn't go through a skating phase when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And so that one line to me helped a lot sort of patch over how good Ellen Page is relatively quickly. Like, again, we see her do like a training montage type of thing. Mm-hmm. But it is still relatively quickly that she goes from like, I haven't skated since I was much younger to like, I am the best skater on the team. Yeah. Or one of the best skaters on the team. But the fact that she specifically had like a skating phase as a kid, I can totally buy that she was rusty, but then had built up enough. Because if you learn to do something when you're young, it is much easier to then redo that thing when you're older.
Yep.
As we can attest to, because I haven't skated in years, but I skated a little bit when I was younger, and it is not super hard for me. I'm not good by any stretch, but if I put on some skates, I can kind of do it again. And it's, if you're learning from scratch when you're older, it's not remotely the same thing. So I thought the movie did a good job, sort of, at least giving that as an explanation as to how she gets so good so quickly.
I really thought that Bliss honestly had a better character arc overall in the movie. Like, the book, not that she doesn't have a character arc in the book, she does, and she definitely learns things, but I felt like the book, she goes, in the movie she definitely goes from like, oh, she starts at point A and now she's at point B or whatever. Yeah. I felt like the book more took her like, she's at A.1 and now she's at A.2. Yeah. It's not that much of an arc for her. She already kind of knows who she is at the beginning of the book, and roller derby is just like a magnification of that. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the movie, we see her really discover who she is and who she can be. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's similar in the movie, but it definitely seems like more. It's a more stark, maybe just a like slightly better written arc in terms of putting it into more sharp relief.
Yeah. I also liked that the book showed how Bliss gets her derby name. When the coach says, like, you got to be ruthless to her. And, like, we kind of see a moment in her face of, like, oh, I understand now. Yeah. Like, that kind of moment. There was one complaint that I did have about the book was that there is a lot that happens, like, quote unquote, off screen. Oh, okay. That, like, and then she says, like, oh, by the way, my derby name is Babe Ruthless. Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, does that, like, mean anything to you? Or, like, how did you decide on that? Yeah. But we see that in the movie, which I thought was better. I liked the scene when Bliss makes Pash throw up. Yeah. I thought that was it was a good, like, comedic little moment.
Yeah, Pash is drunk way too much. Yeah. And Ellen Page talks her into throwing up by describing in explicit detail Pash's father having sex, which is quite funny.
I also liked that the movie made Razor, the coach, more of a character. Yeah. They do have a coach in the book, but he's not like an important character, really. So I thought that was a nice addition.
I felt like the whole time that character was supposed to have been played by Shawn Michael Scott, but that he wasn't quite old enough for the role or something.
It was a little moment, but I liked the reveal that the striper shirt, her favorite t-shirt, actually belonged to her mom. Yeah. In the book, it's that she like found the t-shirt at a thrift store, and then like later on in the same scene, I think, her mom is like, oh, I went to see them once. Yeah. So that's kind of that reveal. Yeah. I think the movie one, but the movie one where we find out, oh, that's actually her mom's shirt. Yeah. I thought was pretty good. I want to talk about her dad. Mm-hmm. Her relationship with her dad and his character arc, I think, was one of my favorite things about the movie.
Yeah.
It's not present in the book. We don't see them like build a relationship throughout the story. And that makes him be ultimately being the reason that she's allowed to go to that final bout feel a little like Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
I think it works a lot better in the movie because we do see his arc and like finally being able to kind of stand up to the mom and say like, not that he's like, I mean, he is, but it sounds bad to say it does sound bad
to say that, but because she is slightly controlling of the daughter specifically, and he does kind of come up against her and bat up against her in that moment and say, no, we have to do we have to make our daughter happy. Yeah. And what's going to make her happy isn't doing pageants.
Yeah. And I think it really works because we see him interact with his wife. We see him interact with Bliss. We see them all interact together in the movie. So we know what his motivation is, and then we get to see him have that change at the end. And like I said, the book does not nearly have that much interaction between all of those characters. So him coming to the rescue feels more of like an afternote.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that it's something that gets mentioned after the fact. I brought up that issue of like things happening off screen in the book. So like kind of like after she gets to go, she's like, oh, it was actually my dad who convinced my mom. So we don't get to have like that emotional pivotal scene with him where he's talking to her mom.
Yeah.
And I loved that the movie chose to give some focus to the father-daughter relationship. I think that was something that was really sweet.
Yeah, no, it was my favorite part of the movie.
And I loved that, like, he clearly was wanting something like her roller derby career. Yeah. Like, we saw there was a little bit of tension with the neighbor who has two sons on the football team. Yeah. But I also loved that they never made it into a weird, like, why couldn't I have had a son?
Yeah,
kind of a thing.
He never
laments the fact that he has daughters. He clearly loves them. He supports them. He's supportive of the whole pageant thing.
Yeah.
But like watching his and Bliss's relationship develop was really sweet and really wholesome, and I really loved it.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was like you said, it felt really real because it did feel, the caricature of that relationship is, like you said, is why couldn't I have daughters, and then the big huge arc from why I'm hiding watching football in the van, I wish I had a son, to actually I guess this roller derby thing's okay.
Yeah.
And like, I guess I am proud of you, actually. It's a lot more subtle than that and a lot more nuanced.
And it could have gone so bad and so caricature, but it didn't, and I loved it.
Yeah, it was so good. And I think part of that is, and it was one of my favorite things about the entire film, is the thing that I think works best about this movie is those main few characters and their performances, those main characters, how they're written, and the performance by those actors. So Daniel Stern, Marcia Gay Harden, Ellen Page, and some of the other main players like Aaliyah Shawkat and Kristen Wiig and Drew Barrymore and them do. But Drew Barrymore's not as important of a character. But mainly like the family relation, like those three main family members are like, their performances are so perfect, and they're all great actors. But on top of that, it's written so well, and like you've said, it hits the emotional notes of a tropey, cliche coming of age story in a very subversive and interesting way. That is it. Like, you still get the big, like, emotional gut punch of the dad being proud and supporting his daughter at the end, but you get there not from where you would traditionally get there from.
Yeah.
And it is a really compelling story because of that.
My last note in this segment, the end with her mom reading her speech, it's a little cheesy.
in that, just real quick, in that particular moment, I couldn't decide which they were going to do, and I couldn't decide which I thought would be better. I was like, is she going to read it out loud, or are we going to get a voiceover from Ellen Page? And I didn't know which I would have been better. I think her reading it maybe was better. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It was it was a good scene.
Yeah. It was a good scene. It is a little cheesy, but I think it does help her mom have a bit more of an arc there at the end.
Yeah.
I think without that, it's more like it is in the book, where she kind of wobbles back and forth on that line of having an arc. So I think the speech brings their relationship and her character to a nice close.
Yeah, but I think the thing that makes it perfect is that they don't then give another scene where they have like a completely happy resolution.
No,
so,
I
like,
agree.
You know what I mean? Because they could have easily had that moment where she reads the letter, and then there'd been one more scene between her and Ellen Page where it's like a bit more of a saccharine conclusion. Mm-hmm. But because the last scene we got between them was her mom kind of grudgingly like acknowledging her daughter as playing roller derby, but their like last conversation together that we see is Ellen Page being like, "Are you gonna be okay with it?" She's like, "It's gonna be hard," or something like that. And then we cut to her reading the letter in the next day or whatever, and then we don't get anything else. And so there's an implication of sort of a resolution and a promise of a happier future there, but we don't get the button on it that would feel like unnecessary. You know what I mean? Like, it could have easily had that extra scene of them, like, of Ellen Page, of her finished reading the letter, putting it in the envelope and setting it down. Then Ellen Page walks in the door, and the mom walks over to the door and just gives her a big hug without saying anything. And then the camera comes around to behind Ellen Page, and her mom's crying. And then you know what I mean? Like, we could have had that scene, but they don't do that scene. And it felt like a very deft hand in not having that moment, because like we don't need it, and it also leaves things a little bit more like tenuous but still in the right direction. So yeah, there are definitely, and I think that is something that elevates this movie over like the typical kind of teen movies of the era, where there is, especially with those big emotional moments, where there was a very deft hand at the wheel. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right. That was it for Better in the Movie. We got a few things to talk about in What the Movie Nailed.
As I expected, practically perfect in every way.
All right, I'm going to run through a list
power
here.
Jam this.
You usually don't have a lot of analysis on this section, but this is stuff that the movie got exactly right from the book. Her mom's obsession with pageants. The mom and dad parenting dynamic at the beginning of the movie. Her mom mistaking the pipes in the thrift shop for vases and then being embarrassed and refusing to buy her the shoes because there were pipes for sale there.
Yes. Bongs.
Yes, bongs. I couldn't come up with the word when I was writing. I was like, I know what those are called. I swear. Thank you.
Weed vases.
I'm going to call them that from now on.
Yeah, bongs.
Weed vases. Bliss and Pasha's friendship dynamic, I thought the movie nailed. They show her taking the bingo bus with all of the old people to Austin to get to practice.
Yeah, that's cute.
The scene where Bliss hip checks Corby. Oh,
off the railing? Yeah.
It's not off a railing in the book, but she does do that in the book. She like hip checks her into some lockers.
Yeah.
The fire marshal breaking up the bout, we talked about. The line, roller derby is not a crime.
I almost asked about that because the guy yells it.
And it is from the book.
when the police and the fire department show up, roller derby's not a crime, man. They repeat it in the trailer, which made me think it probably was in the book, because it's again in the trailer, or not the trailer, the closing credits. It happens again.
Yeah. Maven / Dinah being the one who kind of outs Bliss about lying about her age.
But she doesn't.
She doesn't in the movie. She doesn't explicitly, but she does in the book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But she is the one who finds out.
Right. And kind of brings that to a head. Pash and Birdman get together. That's from the book. Her team still supports her and wants her to be there, even though she lied to them about her age. Which, side note to that, I didn't feel like that was realistic. I feel like your team would probably be pretty mad at you if you put them at risk for a lawsuit.
Yeah.
From your parents who clearly don't want you to be doing this because you had to lie about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's going to be my note on that. Bliss going on the school computer and seeing a picture of some other girl with Oliver, and the girl is wearing her striper
That's how she
t-shirt.
finds out.
That's how she finds out, yeah. And that ye old computer in the school library.
Yeah.
And then she goes home and she eats a big pan of food directly out of the fridge. It was shepherd's pie in the book. I don't know if we could tell what it was. I thought it looked like maybe a lasagna in the movie.
Yeah, something like that in the movie.
But that was a scene that was taken directly from the book.
There you go. All right, that was it for the movie Nailed It. We've got a few odds and ends, and then we'll get to the final verdict. I wanted to first mention before I forget about it, the other reason that I liked that the Hurl Scouts lost. Well, it was two reasons, and I don't think I've mentioned either of them. And I didn't have a note, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't forget about this, because I put a pin in it earlier, and sometimes I'll put a pin in something, and then I'll forget about it.
Yeah, we're a little guilty of that.
That happens occasionally. But this one I wanted to get back to. The two reasons that I really liked that the Hurl Scouts lost at the end of the movie, which they don't in the book, is one, I like that I felt that really captured, not only that they get second place, they lose, quote unquote, but their reaction afterwards, that they're like still very happy. And like because they had a good season, they did a good job. They skate, they did their best, that sort of thing. I felt really captures what I sort of feel and what appears to be the vibe of roller derby in general, as a very supportive, a very it is competitive, but also
it's not toxic competitive.
Not toxic competitive. Like it's a very supportive while being competitive environment, and so the idea of I thought it just sort of captured the sportsmanship of roller derby really well to get second place and to everybody still be celebrating, but not in a way like they were earlier where they were like, "Woo, we got second," because they lost. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like because they did have a good run, they had a good season, and they almost won this game, and it was very close, but they got edged out. And there's always next year and that sort of thing. To me, it felt like I said, it captured that sort of the spirit of the competitive nature of roller derby, but also specifically, I think it's a good button on Maven, not Maven. I'm thinking of Sex Education now. The character's name is Maven in Sex Education. Why can I never remember her name? Juliette Lewis's character.
It is Iron Maven.
Iron Maven. Okay, but I was going to say Maven. That's why I was getting confused, because Maven is the character in Sex Education. Anyways, Iron Maven, as a button on her storyline, she gets to win.
Yeah.
Like she's been, and now they've won 3 years in a row, so it's not like she hasn't won before. But we haven't seen her win before, and so it felt good, even though she's been a jerk. And I think it's a success of the movie that even though she's been a jerk the whole movie, when we figure out sort of get that one scene where, and I think it's also a credit to Juliette Lewis's performance specifically in that scene where she kind of explains herself, that her winning actually felt good to me. That like, you know what I mean? Like like she's been a jerk the whole movie, but I'm happy she won because she is probably almost done with this. And specifically, Ellen Page Bliss is going to be doing this for at least, I don't know, 5, for a while.
And after that scene with them where we find out what her motivation is and what her backstory is, I do think it would potentially, it would fall flat, I think, to have Bliss, like, quote unquote, take that from her.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. And so when I thought that was going to happen, but you're still, it's just a really well done ending overall, is because you're still rooting for Bliss, but at the same time, if she had beaten her, it would have felt weird and off. And so it's glad that they didn't win, because maybe they'll win next year or whatever. Like it. I thought that ending was a very clever change, especially finding out that wasn't what happened in the book. I thought it was just a really smart change overall.
The movie nailed real life a couple times.
Yeah.
At least in my experience. There was one point when they were practicing when the coach started yelling, bend those knees, bend those knees, bend those. And I freaking cracked up.
Yeah.
Because, shout out to every veteran skater that I skate with. That's all we scream at each other during practice. Bend your knees.
Gotta bend the knees.
Derby stance.
It's important. This is a note we both mentioned, or both laughed at out loud in the movie, is that right before Ellen Page's first bout, she's gonna do her first bout, and she's very nervous, and the team has bought her a gift before her first bout, and it's a mouth guard. I know. And we both turned to each other and we're like, has she been skating this whole time without a mouth guard? It's very unsafe.
It's a good way to lose your teeth.
Yeah, or bite your tongue off. Good Lord, yeah. But they give her a mouth guard before, and now, like, you know, they even have a line where they go, safety is sexy, or something like that, which, again, also captures the spirit of roller derby. That's a very derby line. But I did think it was funny that they gave her a mouth guard then, and now, it could be implied that maybe she had another mouth guard.
Yeah, or maybe she had like a crappy one.
Yeah, and they got her like a nice one. Who knows? But it seems like they're giving her first mouth guard right before the match, and so she's been skating without one this whole time, and like eating it in practice and stuff. And I was like, that's not good. That's not good at all. I did also want to mention that we talked about the moment where the roller derby girls came in, skated in to the thrift shop that Bliss is in, and the way Ellen Page acts that scene. And now, I don't know if this is intentionally like multi-layered or not, but it appears to me in that moment that that Bliss is having a sexual awakening. Watching these women skate into the shop, and I don't blame her. And it doesn't go that direction in the text of the film in any stretch, by any stretch. But I did like, because it is the way you would shoot. It is the exact way you would shoot in a traditional young adult movie. The scene of the main character seeing their love interest for the first time. Yeah. It's like this slow-mo push in on both of them, and them like being super cool, and like and the person's and our main character seeing like them like biting their lip and kind
of standing there awkwardly.
It is shot quintessentially like that coming of age sexual awakening scene.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like that was on accident, but I could be wrong. I don't know. But again, it never goes anywhere over the course of the film. But I just thought it was interesting.
It's not an aughts teen movie without a food fight.
Yeah, that was dumb.
I didn't mind it.
It's fine.
It was a short scene. I think if it had dragged out more, it would have been like, eh.
Yeah.
But it is kind of like tropey of the era to have like a big brawl scene.
Like a big food fight.
It made me think of the brawl scene at the end of Mean Girls.
Oh,
where everybody's just fighting each other.
Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit. Let's just talk about it now because I have numerous notes about it. Just about the actual roller derby in this movie. And we can't completely comment on every element of it because it is not flat track.
It's right. It's not flat track.
Changes things slightly, I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't know how different it, like strategy and rules wise it is for banked track. I also don't know not nearly everything there is to know about flat track even.
No.
But we did talk about this throughout the film, that it kind of seemed like they weren't really blocking.
There was like zero blocking throughout the course of the entire film, except for very specific moments when then it was comical, like illegal blocking of like elbowing people and stuff. But it was one of the things that in the first bout in particular I noticed, and it happens throughout, that there's like not blocking. They basically just skate. They just skate, and then the person kind of just skates around them.
Which, at least in flat track, the blockers form walls.
Spend a lot of time not skating, and a fair amount of time like standing and moving back and forth on their toes, like on your toe stops and stuff, to like literally block.
Yeah,
almost like a lineman in like football or something, as opposed to like just skating and kind of vaguely getting in the way.
Well, yeah, and there's like a lot of like moving back and forth.
Yeah, like
and like
laterally, like side to side. Yeah. Whereas in the movie, it's literally just. And now, the reason they do this, and it's I understand. I'm not going to pretend to be like, whoa, they got it all wrong. They didn't know what they're doing. They know it. I think they knew it. They had people that played roller derby.
Yeah.
There, they skating and stuff. They're aware, and they get the other thing I thought was really interesting. They get a lot of the little details right. Of like, we constantly see in the corner of the shot the ref skating with the lead jammer, like pointing at him with their hand in the air, doing the thing, and
and like indicating,
like
points
indicating who's the lead jammer and doing points, and they and the rules overall are roughly right in terms of like when they explain like how you get points and stuff like. So they clearly knew, and the person who wrote the book and wrote the screenplay played roller derby. They know, you know what I mean. So it's not that the people didn't know, but you have to make it interesting for film.
There are very clearly choices that were like, okay, we're shooting a movie. And we need to make it exciting and dynamic and interesting to film.
Yeah. So we can't just have people standing there a lot and like kind of trying to block. And then a person trying to get past them. We need to have dynamic shots where the camera's weaving in and out of people constantly. And so, like, and the thing is that, like, that stuff does happen, but it's like 10%. It's like a smaller percentage of, like, the maybe not 10%. I'm just making up a number. But, like, it is like, let's take the most possible exciting elements constantly, which is what every sport and every movie does, to be fair. But it is one of those things where it's like knowing a little bit about the thing in the movie does sort of make it a little hard to watch at times. It's like for me, I did drumline for 10, I don't even know how long, from elementary school all the way, middle school all the way through college. So at least like 10 years probably, roughly. And so I knew a lot about drumline and marching band and that sort of thing. And it's like watching the movie Drumline. It's like you can't watch the movie. You can. It's complicated because they get some stuff right, but then get other stuff really wrong. It's also a different context because that's a historical black college, so it's slightly different than. But anyways, like knowing some of those technical details about how things work, it's like, oh, that's not. Nope, that doesn't work. That doesn't make sense. Nope, that's bad. No, wouldn't do that. Nope. And you know, but here's the thing: is that you can do that and still have a very effective and good movie, because Rocky, like one of the most celebrated films of all time, especially most celebrated sports films of all time, is a terrible example of boxing. Like, it's awful.
Yeah.
It's literally, it's just people letting each other punch each other for like the entire time. Like, nobody blocks. Nobody, like, it's nothing like actual boxing, like, at all. It's like comically bad boxing, but it's entertaining to watch in a movie. And I think it's a very similar type of thing going on here with the roller derby, where it is like only the highlights, which makes sense when you're making a movie.
Yeah. Another moment where the movie nailed real life was when they were comparing bruises.
Yeah. Yes.
I have had one really bad bruise.
One wicked one.
So far. It was a pretty wicked bruise. But I also have teammates who will like happily whip out their phone and show you like a photo roll of derby bruises. Yep. So
yeah, you got chastised for not taking a picture.
I did a little bit.
Yeah. So
it was in my ass crack. I didn't want to take a picture of it.
Yeah.
But it was a pretty wicked bruise.
One little moment that I thought was funny, that not even specifically to roller derby, but just was a realistic detail of anybody who's part of any organized thing. And there's always one person like this where it's after Ellen Page watches their first bout and she's talking to Kristen Wiig's character, and Kristen Wiig was like, oh, you should come try out. We got tryouts on Tuesday night. And Drew Barrymore's character turns to her and goes, we have tryouts Tuesday night? And she goes, yeah.
Yeah.
And at that moment of the one person who never knows when anything is, but like, you know, it's like, there's always somebody like that. And I thought that was it very much captured a personality that is prominent amongst most organized sports / music groups or whatever that I've ever been a part of.
And here's the point in my notes where I wrote, "Where are the refs?" in all caps.
God, yeah.
And they immediately took Drew Barrymore's character out of the bout. Like,
that
immediately after I wrote that. Yeah, that was when she, like, actually started an open
physically
brawl.
punches a person.
But yeah, therefore I was like, where are the refs?
Yeah.
What are they doing? Why aren't they stopping this?
Yeah.
Why aren't they sending people to the box?
Nope. They literally never call any penalties. The only thing they ever do is they take Drew Barrymore out when she physically assaults a person.
Yeah.
But they throw elbows and stuff nonstop in this movie, and none of that ever gets called or anything, or they're just like, no, that's a normal. And that was one of the things with the plays earlier that I was talking about. There's one play that they do where I think the Holy Rollers is the one he gives to them.
Yeah. But the whole play is just like them turning around and clotheslining
everybody on the team. And I was like, that's okay.
Yeah.
And also it's like, oh, they finally decided to block. And when they decided to block, they decided to do it completely illegally. Like, they just like literally throw an elbow into the face of every player on the other team. Yeah.
Yeah. At least Flat Track and like now.
Yeah.
Like, we had talked a little bit about maybe it was a little different a decade ago. Maybe. I don't know. I feel like probably not that much different.
Maybe not to that extent.
Yeah, there are very specific rules about, like, where on another player's body you can hit them and, like, what parts of your body you can hit them.
There's been moments where I've watched bouts where I'm like, oh, that was a penalty? That felt like that shouldn't have been a penalty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, like, throwing elbows at faces is for sure a penalty.
Yeah.
But yeah.
At the end of the movie, when Bliss she's getting ready and she's going to do the pageant, and then she gets permission to go to the roller derby bout. And then she gives her dress to this other girl who's there. Do we know her?
She was in the very first scene, I think.
Okay. I was like, who is this? We've never interacted with her before. Like, it's nice that you're giving her your $800 dress.
Yeah.
But, like, who are you?
Yeah. I felt like there was probably another couple scenes maybe with her that were dropped, because I think we were introduced to her in the very first scene. But, like, I don't even know if we saw... I could be wrong, but I don't even know if we saw her and Bliss interact. We may have just had her introduced, like, on stage or something. I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, she was probably one of the other girls, I'm sure.
But anyway,
but I was like, what?
That's probably a cutting room floor thing, if I had to guess. Potentially. I also, at the very end, when she's in the last roller derby, the last bout, and it's the Holy Rollers or whatever versus them, and there's a moment where, this is the moment where Iron Maven, like, comes to respect Bliss. It's because she's like, oh, you know, it's always been it's so easy for you, and I busted my ass and blah blah blah. And then in this final bout, one of the Holy Rollers like body checks Bliss and like knocks her into the railing, and she falls on the ground, and she's laying there, and everybody, like, the whole crowd goes silent.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my god. And it's like this big dramatic moment, and then she gets up and she's okay, and like Iron Maven's like, kid's all right, she's tough, blah blah blah, and everybody's like, whoa. And to me, because the rest of the violence in the roller derby had been so over the top, the rest of the film, that moment fell a little flat for me.
I agree.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, because we'd had people like breaking noses and like knocking people over the railing and stuff, that when we get to the end and she just gets like body, and she lands hard, but like she's fallen also hard at other times. She broke her glasses in like the first scene of the movie, like that she roller skates, like on the rink or whatever. And so like I felt like it should have been more dramatic. Like her injury, like whatever happened to her to like get the respect and stuff should have been more. Either it should have been more like crazy, or the rest of the sort of violence over the course of the roller derby should have been dialed back slightly. I don't know, because it didn't feel like that big of a moment, at least not that much more than like what she had experienced to that point. I guess it was supposed to be, but it just kind of didn't land for me in the way that
I agree with that. I did think it felt a little bit flat. Yeah. It's like she just hit the, maybe feel as impactful as they wanted it to.
Like she just hit the railing and then landed on the floor, and I was like, wait, is she like people have been falling constantly, and including her.
Yeah.
Now she's like maybe has a concussion or is unconscious or something like, and that can happen. Freak accident. I get it, but it just didn't look. I don't know.
My last note here. I believe I put a pin in this earlier, so I'm gonna come back to it. I am a little conflicted about a specific change that was made from book to movie, and that is Pash getting arrested.
Yeah.
So in the movie, Pash gets arrested. She's got an open container.
Yeah.
She's also a minor. In the book, that doesn't happen, but Bliss does abandon her at the bout when the fire marshal breaks it up. And then the next day at school, we come to find out that they had like this partner project they were working on, and Bliss has totally neglected to do her half of it, which like tanks their grade.
Yeah.
And it's kind of similar to in the movie to where like she's super smart and she's really concerned about like getting a grade so she can go to a good college.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was a little bit torn about that because I think getting arrested is like way higher stakes.
Yeah.
Which is more interesting. But those stakes don't end up amounting to anything.
Yeah.
In the movie. We're like, oh, she got arrested, and she's like, well, it's not the kind of extracurricular activity they want on college applications. But then, like, 2 scenes later, she's like, oh, I got into all these good schools.
Yeah, I got into Columbia,
so,
Johns
like,
Hopkins, yeah.
So, like, nothing ever happens with it. So I'm like, it's more interesting that it's higher stakes. But if you're not going to do anything with it, maybe it would be better to just go with the lower stakes thing that's, like, easier to hand wave away.
Yeah. Yeah, like she still had good enough grades.
Yeah.
Anyway, so.
Because, like, I mean, one assignment.
Yeah.
You would have to have, like, in high school, that's probably not going to completely tank your... Maybe in college. But maybe. But that's not going to tank you.
No. And yeah, they could have even had a line where... to kind of explain away them looking past the misdemeanor or whatever she ended up with. But, yeah. I think it is more dramatic, obviously, but maybe they needed to do a little more with it.
A little more something with it. Yeah. Because that is, like, it's awfully high stakes to just, like, now it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't matter. She's good. She's going to Columbia.
Yeah, she's fine. Yeah. She'll be fine, guys.
Yeah. All right. That was it for all of our general odds and ends and notes and stuff. Holy cow, this is a long one. We got to wrap it up. It's time for the final verdict.
Now... are you ready for your sentence?
Sentence? But there must be a verdict first.
Sentence first, verdict afterward.
I'm going to go with the movie this time. It's not a perfect movie. I think there are definitely some weak points, as we've discussed, but it is a really good movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I kind of wish I had seen it earlier in my life. This was my first viewing of it as well. But I thought it was really good. Really enjoyed watching it. Mm-hmm. The book is fine. It's got its good points. I do think it's something that I probably would have enjoyed more as a teenager, maybe than I did as a 30-year-old. It's very much written in like a teenage voice. Yeah. And I think if you're not a teenager, that can get a little bit grating. But now having both read and watched, I kind of get the sense that maybe the author/screenwriter was a little bit more comfortable working in the medium of a screenplay, which totally makes sense since that's primarily what she does. Yeah. But there were some kind of rough patches in the book. Like, for example, the first few chapters of the book are really info dumps that explain who Bliss is and like these various elements of her life. And it is hard, I think, to naturally work background information into a novel, especially when you kind of need that information up front. Yeah. Whereas in a film, you can really utilize that visual language and integrate that background info a lot more naturally. Yeah. Like, you know, whereas in the book, we have to spend all of this time explaining who her mom is and the whole history with the pageants, and we need all of that information up front, so we kind of have to info dump it.
Yeah.
Whereas in the film, we can just show that initial scene where they're at the pageant and we see how her mom, like we see what Bliss does and we see how her mom reacts, and we're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, we know
exactly what's going on. We know everything that we need to know about these two characters and their history in order to move forward with the story.
And then we can kind of piecemeal throughout, like, oh, we see the picture of her as the Bluebonnet pageant winner, like back in the 80s. So, she, like you can kind of get that throughout the course of the film after you've already set that groundwork.
And then in addition to that, I thought the movie also made better use of character arc. Bliss had a better arc. Her dad gets an arc. Her mom gets an arc. And they all kind of as a family have like a unit arc as well. Yeah. For me, it is going to be the movie. Book was good, but I think the movie overall engaged in better storytelling.
All right. There you go. Go ahead. Check out Whip It, the film. Check out Whip It / Derby Girl, the book. They're both good, but the movie's just a little bit better. All right. Before we get to our announcement of the next episode, we got a few things to wrap up here. First thing is follow us on social media. Facebook, Twitter, Goodreads, Instagram. Just search for This Film Is Lit. You'll be able to find us. It's where we post our follow-up polls that you can vote on or comment on. If you don't have a preference, if you don't prefer the movie or the book, you can just comment why you liked the movie or why you liked the book or vice versa. Don't let the fact that you didn't do both keep you from voting or keep you from commenting. We also post all kinds of other fun stuff on all of our social media. Also wanted to mention that this Friday, if you're listening to this when this episode comes out on Wednesday, this Friday, which is April the 10th or something like that.
I think so.
Yeah, the 10th. We're releasing one of our bonus patron episodes to everybody, and that is going to be our Tiger King review and discussion. During this time, we know everybody's kind of home with nothing to do, so we figured maybe, not all of us, or if you're out and need something to listen to, or whatever it is, we thought we'd give away kind of another little free preview of our bonus patron-only content. We spent an hour talking about Tiger King.
And boy, did we have some thoughts.
It's one of the other reasons I wanted to release it to everybody is I kind of think that it's maybe a discussion that needs a little more, potentially, not to be like overly praising of our discussion, but I think it's some of the stuff we talk about is something that I would like to see discussed more widely amongst people who have watched the show and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So let's check that out on Friday, our Tiger King discussion. Finally, you can support us on Patreon, like I mentioned, and go to patreon.com/thisfilmislit. Support us for as little as $2 a month, but $2, $5, or $15 a month. You get access to different things at each level. That helps us out a lot with some of our administrative fees and that sort of thing. And it's also gives you access to some fun stuff. Katie, what's next?
Up next, we are going to be doing a book from a favorite series of mine when I was a child. We are going to talk about Beezus and Ramona by Beverly Cleary.
Never heard of it. I mean, I've heard of Beverly Cleary, but I don't think I've heard of this book.
Well, you did not have an amazing girlhood, clearly.
I did not. You got me. You got me. All right. Is it what is the movie? Is it called Beezus and Ramona?
They flip-flopped it for the movie. It's Ramona and Beezus.
Interesting.
Which I want to talk about why they might have done that.
Okay. All right. That will be our next episode. Beezus and Ramona and Beezus. Look out for that in 2 weeks' time, and in 1 week's time we'll have a prequel episode, and in 2 days' time we'll have our Tiger King discussion. Carol Baskins didn't kill her husband. You have to listen to the episode to find out more. So yeah, until that time, I don't know, next week or whatever. Guys, gals, non-binary, and everybody else,
keep reading books,
keep watching movies,
and keep being awesome.